Will you open your eyes? It's a wonder what you'll find with an open mind. You may be surprised. Yeah, gotta get away from this illusion for the sake of the world. This illusion has gotta go. Yeah.
I think we're on.
I think we are too. There we are.
Kind of.
Yes.
I can barely see us.
The sands of Mars behind us? Oh, okay, we're floating.
And it looks so dark.
Yes. Well, it's because
And you can see through.
Nuclear!
Oh my gosh!
Did somebody set off a nuke somewhere?
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Atheist Experience. We are, in fact, live, in case you couldn't have figured that out by the...
Except me, I appear to be a ghost. Look at my shirt.
the week after
I've
week.
seen-
See, that's why I wore a dark shirt today. Plus, it's got flames on it, so I must be evil.
This is actually kind of cool. You can see through me, look.
The good thing is that you didn't have to see me dancing to music because we have a brand new intro. Basically, we've taken Listen to Reason, which Brian Stiekman was
Great song, great guy.
Good enough to write for us, and put in, and we've added graphics from Daniel Warwick in Philadelphia, along with this new lower third, which it seems to be kind of higher than lower third to me. But
Well, it's okay, you know.
here's what's going on. You're watching the Atheist Experience Live. I'm Matt Dillahunty. This is Martin Wagner. Welcome to the show. Ooh,
Yes.
everything changed.
We teleported to a different...
We can fix anything just like that.
All this high-tech stuff is just so cool.
This is a nonprofit.
No, we're the other show.
This is a live public access television program sponsored by the Atheist Community of Austin, a nonprofit educational organization promoting positive atheism and the separation of church and state. The ACA has weekly meetings every Sunday at Romeo's on Barton Springs Road, except for the first Sunday of the month when we host a lecture series at the Austin History Center located at the corner of 9th and Guadalupe. On Thursdays, we have a happy hour at the Dog and Duck at 17th and Guadalupe. There's a number of other events. For more information about the ACA and all of our events, you can go to our website, www.atheist-community.org. In addition to this program, the ACA also sponsors a bi-weekly internet audio podcast called The Nonprofits. That's Prophets. And you can go to nonprofitsradio.com for more information about that. Nonprofits is currently on hiatus due to circumstances beyond our control, but we'll be getting that show back up and running as soon as possible and probably have some special shows. Martin is with us this week.
Hello.
I'm gonna half-ass everything today, including the announcements. We got here a whole hour early. We listened to feedback. You can email us at tv@atheist-community.org. That goes to myself, most of the co-hosts, and a lot of the people behind the scenes. And there's like 4 or 5 people back in the control room now trying to make things work. We do read all of the email as long as our spam filters don't eat it. We cannot possibly respond to all of it now that the show is streaming over the internet and being rebroadcast online and
Everywhere,
at our site and at YouTube and Google Video and Blip TV and just everywhere. We get more email than we can possibly answer, but we appreciate all of it. We do read all of it, and there's been a lot of feedback with regard to the quality of the show,
the issues
since we returned.
Yeah, so it's amazing. This $1 million restoration that has
They spent $1 million to make this place better, and what we got are some really pretty HD widescreen TVs that we now have a preview on after several weeks of not having a preview.
The show's never looked this good to us.
Yeah.
I mean, this is the best it's ever looked.
We are here in crisp HD with beautiful cameras. Unfortunately, the audio quality is crap and not wired correctly. It's like somebody forgot that occasionally people would like to do live shows with taking live calls. So we'll put the number up for you in just a couple minutes. As a matter of fact, you guys can go ahead and put the number up. We can start lining up calls.
And I would have had better sense than to wear this shirt. Heather. No, if we were chroma keying everything. So, because it's like, it's not really green, but it's green enough maybe to confuse.
That's all right.
Yeah, so I'm kind of like translucent today, and I like that.
The ghost of Martin has joined us for the program today.
No, it's just, I'm
so
just
we'll get the number up for you, and you can go ahead and call in. I'm not even going to necessarily limit calls. Martin and I are going to try to take calls nonstop because the biggest audio problem last week on the show was that people calling in were hearing a terrible echo. I know this firsthand because I called in 3 times last week in order to try and test this out, including after the show. So when the number gets up, you guys can go ahead and call in. We'll see if we've improved things. We're also getting our our laptop communications back up so we know who's on the line and who's not. Some other announcements to get out of the way. The Texas Free Thought Convention is coming up in San Antonio next Saturday. You can go to texasfreethoughtconvention.com for more information. There's lots of guest speakers, Dan Barker, Vic Stanger, and many others, along with events for family, kids. It was a great event last year. We did it in Austin. I had the chance to speak and meet people from around Texas. I'll be going down there next Saturday, as will, I think, Jen, and Don Rhodes is planning on going, and a number of other AC.
I think I'm probably going to come.
You going to come down?
Yeah.
Cool.
So we're going to...
Maybe we can work out some carpool stuff.
Yeah, it'd be a good idea. And someone needs to bring laptops so we can live blog the thing.
I'll take care of that.
All right.
I will bring something to live blog it.
All right.
So we've been working on the studio stuff. We've been juggling hosts and co-hosts left and right. We've got all kinds of new stuff, and as soon as they put the phone number up, we'll have callers calling in.
Yeah.
I bet they can't even hear me back in the studio to know that I've...
Well, I think, they were able to hear me earlier. Because you tested me before.
That could be.
You see, so that could be. Yeah, so we're trying to puzzle through
There's
all
the
of
number.
these. Yes.
There's the number right there. If you're watching, feel free to go ahead and call in. We'll get some other quick announcement-y type stuff out of the way. Last Sunday was the ACA lecture. We have our lecture series the first Sunday of every month. Next month's lecture is going to be somebody whose name I don't have in front of me because I've lost my sheets. But we're actually working with the Atheist Community of Austin is doing a lot more to work in conjunction with CFI Austin with regard to speakers and events, and we're very optimistic about that. There's also going to be news from potentially the Coalition Reason. People have seen bulletin boards going up all over the United States and around the world, probably as part of the a follow-on to the bus ads in the UK. There may be more of that to come in Austin as well. You can visit the ACA website, www.atheist-community.org, for more information. There's news feeds up there as well. What have you been doing, Mr. Martin?
Oh, just a little of this and a little of that, working on my documentary project and other stuff, and enjoying the nice weather that we had right up until today, which has really kind of been, it's gross outside, it's all misty, foggy, rainy, and I think that's sort of contributed to an atmosphere of, oh boy, I hope it all works out today in the studio, but hey, we're here, we're having fun, and so, yeah, it's, for the most part, I think, settling into be a nice fall in Austin.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
I mean, here I am looking at you going...
I just passed it to you?
Yes.
You're supposed to hang on to it.
You want me to vamp for 20 minutes while you...
No, we're
I'm a little rusty on the vamping
We're having
thing.
difficulty both with the phones and with... it seems that some of the computers around here have been hit by a virus. And
really?
So, yes. And so in the process of passing a flash memory key around from machine to machine, we got a little screwed today.
You mean somebody brought in a thumb drive or something? And
I'm not exactly sure what's going on. Joe's got this thing set up, so although it's password, you need the password.
Oh, okay.
Which...
Anyway, before the show today, we had Steve, one of our fine producers, Testaphones, call in. He wasn't... They were able to sort of correct the echoey thing with him, and he sounded good to us. So now it's all just a matter of how he's going to sound going out over the air, over the stream, the rest of it. So we're working on all of this stuff. We've been hearing the complaints. Boy, have we been hearing the complaints the last 3 episodes.
Yeah, for the people who have suggested that we go back to Dillahunty International Studios, you can forget that.
We have a feeling that you would like your house back.
Yeah. So we may in the very near future be adding the ability to call in via Skype, which is the same process that we were using while we were doing it from my place. We'll probably add that not next week, but when we return. See, the deal is there's going to be a show next week. That's the 15th. But there will not be shows the 22nd and 29th. There are studio conflicts. There's training going on in the studio.
Oh, so there's 2 shows in a row.
22nd and 29th. There will not be episodes of the Atheist Experience, which, given the way things are going at this very moment, probably good. We can take that time to...
reflect.
Yes, and fix a few things.
Yes. Sit back, have a nice cup of hot chocolate, and hug our dogs.
So I'm not sure. I'm trying to get this up. I can't even get the list of callers at the moment or internet access. But And I've been working so much that I'm out of the loop on news things. So we have absolutely nothing to talk about, nothing to do with. This is going to be...
It's up to you, folks.
Show. As a matter of fact, I refuse to say another word until the phone rings. No, that's not going to work.
No, that's...
It's probably better if we actually talk about a couple of things that's been going on. One subject that came up on the nonprofits recently that I brought up was this idea of whether or not there's a schism within the skeptic community.
Yes.
And I happen to think that there is, and we can talk about that a little bit later. But then it came up that there's also a schism, supposedly, in the atheist community. And there have been a number of people who've written articles lately trying to make this case. And I find it kind of laughable, because what they're identifying is a schism within the atheist community, which I would say is a sub-community of skeptics in some areas. I'll have to draw you a Venn diagram at a later date. But the schism that they're talking about is really just among the people who are atheists. What views do they have on how to address the issues? Some are more vocal, outspoken, antagonistic, relentless, as I might fall into that category. And some would prefer that we just kind of stay quiet and not try to or to try our best.
Be the nice atheist.
Not to offend anybody.
Right.
And I'm fine with that, in the sense that I'm fine with the idea that there are perhaps multiple approaches to discussing the issues.
Well, there should be. I mean, part of being an atheist is we're all a bunch of free thinkers. And I think some of these articles, and I've read some of P.Z. Meyer's feedback on Feringula about his opinions on some of what people are saying about supposed atheist schisms. And you're right, it's simply the case of different atheists having different ideas about how to communicate the concept of atheism and the ideas that are popular among atheists to other atheists as well as the general public. And why that should be a bad thing, people having different views and arguing them and debating them, is sort of a mystery. I think what's happening is people who are pointing at this and thinking this, haha, look, the atheists are having a schism.
They're manufacturing something.
Right. Well, they're thinking of atheism in terms in the same way that they would think of how either a religious group would behave, like the Episcopalians or the Catholics or the Methodists or whatever. And, how they have a schism over some of them are okay with gay priests and others aren't. It's like, well, the reason you call it a schism in those venues is because these are people working off religious dogma.
Right. There is some orthodox perspective for them to.
Same thing in political parties, where there's a party platform,
right?
And then people who deviate from the party platform are usually irritate the hardliners, and then you have that back and forth. In atheism, we don't have anything like that.
We have one thing.
Yeah, we don't believe in any gods.
There's no schism.
Yeah,
all of them, regardless of what tactic.
There's no schism about that
one. What method they're willing to sanction, or what level of discussion they're willing to approve of. They all agree on the same thing, and that's that we do not believe in a God.
That's such a common thing that you encounter are the people who aren't atheists who don't, or who are encountering the new atheism for the first time or what have you. They filter this through what they're already used to, which is they think of it in terms of being, here's just another group with its orthodoxies. And they don't really understand that it's a very different thing here. And among atheists, of course, nobody argues amongst themselves more ferociously, I think, than atheists, because we're all, we encourage free thought, challenging one another's ideas. There are no sacred cows.
By and large, what they're identifying is something that we've pointed out over and over and over again, which is that there's one and only one unifying aspect among atheists, and that is this disbelief in a God. Outside of that, you can have anything, which is why we did an entire episode, Russell and I did, on foolish atheists. People who, there's no guarantee that not believing in a God suddenly makes you rational, or that you were rational before. There's nothing along those lines at all. When you're only, when you only have one point. It's like saying we're a group of non-smokers or non-football players. Outside of that, you could have any number of positions and views. You can agree and disagree. We have people. There's no political consensus even within our small group. I mean, the ACA here in Austin. You're going to find people who are on almost any side of almost any issue. And as you spread that to a larger group or a larger collective of atheists, you're going to find that there's a lot of different categories. So the schism they're identifying is just, hey, you know what? All these people who say they don't believe in God, they don't agree on everything. Well, yeah.
Welcome to our world.
Someday they'll all agree with me, and then we'll be in a better place. But until then, until they either see the folly of their ways, we're going to disagree on a few things.
Oh, well.
Martin already is approaching agreeing with me on everything.
Well, I'm close.
And the areas where we don't agree, clearly you're mistaken.
Well, there's the thing about KY versus Johnson's baby. Well, I'm not quite. I'm not with you on that, but we'll just have to.
There are some areas where it's okay to disagree.
Yes, such as that.
But what they're trying to do, what's happened a lot with some of these articles is that they point to these areas of disagreement. For example, what happened within CFI. For example, Paul Kurtz was kind of ousted in something akin to a coup. If you listen to certain people tell the story.
That's interesting because I have not really been tied into what's aware of what CFI's been up to.
I mean, I would identify myself by and large as a secular humanist, but I'm not up to speed on everything that's going on there, and I don't necessarily want to touch on that. But what I'd say is that once upon a time you had Paul and some people running CFI who had a particular opinion about how they were going to approach religion, how they were going to approach these issues and discussions. And there were some people who disagreed, and now the people who disagreed are more in control of that than others. My objection isn't that that there are people who want to be a little bit more accommodationist. Mm-hmm. If you'd like to do that, that's fine.
Which position was Paul Kurtz taking?
Much more accommodationist.
Okay.
Much more of a we don't need to speak out and offend in that sense. We just need to discuss what we believe and focus on reality and keep things focused in a sort of positive sense. And they would, and I don't want to speak for Paul or for anybody else in there, but I'm just speaking in kind of broad strokes about how they viewed some of the issues. When you had Dawkins, Hitchens, and others, and I'm including various people who've posted their videos on YouTube, and I'd have to include myself, who have been at times relentless in the way that we address the issues. It's off-putting to a lot of people, and not just the people that I'm disagreeing with positionally. It's off-putting to other people who would prefer that, no, there's got to be a nicer way to do this. And I'm fine with that. There's a guy who has a blog that I was pointed to in the last couple of weeks. Somebody was trying to get me to be a nicer person. I always like being nicer if I can. And he was talking about how he had changed his tactics and the kind of results that he'd gotten from that. And my response to that is great. I mean, if you're using a particular type of argument,
approach,
approach, whatever, tactic. I don't. It's hard to make it sound like anything other than what it is. This thing just won't connect. You can go ahead and take it. It's connection timed out again.
Mm-hmm. More technical stuff.
Yeah, in the when you're, it's fine if you're getting results that way. Whatever way gets results, I'm in favor of it. What I'm not a fan of is somebody who says, no, this is the way to get results, and your way is counterproductive and wrong, and you should stop. That is where,
especially when they have no greater criticism of it beyond, well, I find your tone offensive.
Yes.
Which atheists get a lot of, and we certainly get a lot of. And at a certain point, you kind of have to say, well, forget about my tone. My tone doesn't really matter. And if my tone is a little bit harsh or exasperated, well, maybe that's simply because, that reflects just how serious a problem I think that these issues are. So I'm being more vociferous in my objection to it. My approach has always been to adapt my responses to theists simply based on the old "you get what you give" principle. And, we, for example, we get quite a lot of emails on the TV list, and we get some theists who comment on the blog as well. And some of them are nice folks, and I respond nicely to them, and sometimes we have really, really nice lengthy email exchanges. And sometimes we get flat-out pricks, and they get the brunt of our abuse as a result of that. And so I don't really go and seek out fistfights with people simply because I'm interested in shoving my ideological differences in their face. But I have often found that look, I match what I say to
and I'm pretty much in the same position. What I've said in response is that on occasion I can be condescending, arrogant, rude, dismissive, offensive, any number of other things, but people tend to get as good as they give. And likewise, on this show, I've been accused of having godlike patience, doing far too much hand-holding. And then, for example, when Matt Slick calls in and we spend 45 minutes in a detailed debate about logical absolutes and the transcendental argument for the existence of God, I think we've been just about as fair as we can possibly be. I'm not even going to wait for that thing to get up. We're just going to start taking calls, and I have no idea.
Hang on, I think we're on it. Well, maybe we're not.
Well, okay. I have no idea who. Oh, no.
Wow.
Anyway, somebody is online too. You're now live.
Hi, how you doing?
Hi,
doing good.
Who's this?
Good. I just wanted to say first off, I'm a huge fan of the show. Matt, I think
But
you're
not
one
today.
of the smartest freaking people I've ever met in my life, man.
Thanks.
Seriously,
And this thing just found another virus.
Wow.
Sorry?
We've got...
Yeah, I'm sorry. There's a lot going on in the control room. All the computers are messed up. Please continue. I apologize.
That's okay. Real quick, I was curious. How many members do you have in the ACA right now?
I don't know what the current active roll is. I think it's about 140 or so. John, do you know? I don't really know, and I haven't been overly concerned about it because that would probably be paid current active members, and some people are life members and other stuff. I'm far more interested in how many people are actively participating and helping out and things like that than I am. It's, what we get from membership is not the same sort of thing that, for example, a church or other organization would, where they, I've seen churches where they refuse to let anybody off of their rosters because that is clout when it comes time to lobby or get voting power.
Weren't the Mormons just converting dead people at random just to... I heard a story to that effect, something like that. They were just... they just decided, no, that person deserves to be saved. And so they were just volunteering them for conversion. So, we're not...
True. Anyway, I just had a quick thing to tell you guys you might find in music. I used to go to church a lot for like 13 years. I've never been, theist. I've been maybe a theist. But it's funny because I thought about something that I hadn't thought about in years. When I was about 16 at my church, I had an epiphany. And my epiphany was, I wonder if this whole Jesus and God thing is kind of like Santa Claus and the Easter Bunny. In other words, they're either waiting for us to figure out that it's a bunch of BS and like go up and talk to one of the adults, or once we get to a certain age, they're going to just tell us. You know what I mean?
and you were actually expecting some adult to correct you on this, or?
Sure, go ahead.
So someone at the church?
No, I was just curious as to what, personally, I never had any kind of epiphany. Certainly, I've had thoughts along those lines, but I find it kind of amusing that you considered that this could be sort of some sort of conspiratorial joke that you were expected to figure out.
Yeah.
And I know
it's all a test.
I know some atheists who have made an argument that is similar to that, in the sense that what happens if you die? Theists, and you get to an afterlife, and you walk up before whatever being is in control of that afterlife, and he looks at you and says, "Why on earth did you believe this other stuff?" Maybe the purpose of existence was this big test to weed out the people who were gullible. And there's those who stayed intellectually honest, who said, I can't believe those claims because they're not supported by sufficient evidence. Maybe those are the people who get to good afterlife. Yeah. To me, it seems just as plausible, if not more plausible.
That's one of the better comebacks to Pascal's wager that I enjoy.
Yeah. It's
So-
like there's a South Park episode that's really funny, and there's a scene in hell, and the guy's like, one of those guys is like, oh, you know, I was a private Christian. He's like, oh, it's actually the Jehovah's Witnesses. That was the correct answer, you know. So it was kind of.
There's a really good comic that I saw over at Friendly Atheist the other day, who is genuinely a friendly guy. It's the pearly gates, and there's two lines, and one of them is labeled people with the right religion, and the other line is people with the wrong religion. And of course, they're all standing in the line of people with the right religion, and somebody's off the side saying, curiously, nobody ever gets the joke. And somebody else pointed out something that ties into this, which is, you know, one of the things is that maybe the benefit of having the wrong religion is that the line is shorter.
Mm-hmm. Right. And I think that there's I can't recall the title of it, but there's a science fiction novel out there where essentially the premise is that Christianity was this institution that was essentially designed by this alien race seeking to invade us. And the purpose of Christianity was essentially to soften up the human race in preparation for this invasion, which they were going to disguise as the Second Coming.
Aha.
And I think it's called The Meek is the name of it. So that I thought was a fantastically blasphemous take on the whole...
Who came up with that idea?
The name of the book is The Meek, so you can maybe try to Amazon that and see who the author is, because it's not coming to my mind right away. But
that's kind of like Raelian Christians or something, I guess.
It could be. So anyway.
Yeah. But I actually had a question. I kind of want to play theist advocate because I came up with an objection to an argument, Matt, that you made, and I wanted to present it.
Please do.
Matt, you always say and I would certainly agree with this, but the concept of might makes right. That's not a reasonable explanation for believing in a God.
Correct.
It's that how would you respond to the notion that humans, since we're the most powerful, we're the most smart, we exert our will on other animals, we eat meat and things like that. Isn't that the same basic concept?
Possibly.
Possibly, okay.
There's a distinction to be made, I think, that comes down to the ability to reason, the ability to take responsibility for actions. If I have dominion over a rock and I have no ethical or moral obligation to a rock because it has no response, it has no ability to consider the problems or consider the consequences, and it has no propensity to take action at all. As you begin moving up, I don't want to do the up the ladder thing, but as you increase the ability of an entity to think, to act freely, to consider the consequences of its actions, etc., you begin to approach something that becomes more and more like the morality that we would identify with. Now, where do you draw the line? Do you draw it at the cute animals? Do you draw it at humans? Do you draw it at all animals? Do you draw it at all living things? I'm not completely sure, and I think not only is everybody going to have to come up with their own answer, by and large, although we're obviously going to get some consensus and agreement in different areas. I think that the other thing is that line may always be changing, and it may be different in different situations. But yeah, I have no problem at all with it. May be, and I've had lots of arguments with ethical vegans, for example, who want me to stop eating meat, and I have a really lame response to that, apart from just being a speciesist and saying that as long as cows and carrots have the same DNA in them, I'll eat both of them, things like that. But the moral and ethical question is not an easy one. And it's along the same lines, if you want to think about it, when we're trying to figure out these various gray zone issues. Abortion comes to mind, because my position is I'm fairly fine with abortion laws as they are in the United States.
Right.
I'm not sure at what point I would call a fetus human or give it the same rights. I mean, obviously, the difference between birth and 1 day before birth for the natural course is negligible. As a matter of fact, there's most of the time there's no reason it couldn't have been born the day before. But clearly there is some difference between a few cells in a zygote and an 8-month embryo. And so it's difficult to work back and find this. Currently, I'm pretty okay with the idea that when brain function begins, to the sense of thought processes that count beyond simple instinctive pain, or perhaps at the point when that embryo might be able to survive on its own, and that line may be moving as we learn more and more about this. So there's not any, I don't think there's any really easy answer. And I'm open to the possibility that my assessment of my rights to eat some animal may be wrong.
Yeah.
But I will say that wherever the line is, clearly an intelligent, reasoning species that can think and act and consider its actions and can respond to those things, to impose one's will upon that species, I clearly I don't see how anybody could justify that at all.
Right. Well, I was curious. You said that some vegans came up to you, and were those atheist vegans or just vegans, or you don't know?
I don't know. I get it all the time in email, and some of them are probably atheists. Some of them may not be. It's an interesting discussion, and there's a lot that we have to work out with regard to ethics. But I think before we can even get started on working out those, more difficult issues that perhaps have more impact than we realize, but less impact than the issues that we currently deal with, I think we got to get people to agree on some simple things. And I would love for everybody to just agree that slavery is wrong and was always wrong. And the second they admit that, then of course you've got to chuck out the Bible as immoral, at least in those passages that are advocating slavery. And you can't get people to do that.
Well, they always play their get out of the Old Testament free card.
Yes.
When that's a common stuff. It's the big book of multiple choice.
That's a classic one.
Yeah.
Yeah, it drives me nuts. You can't get them to agree on something that's so obviously wrong. How are you ever going to get down to the issues that we could potentially all be wrong on, or make the fine-tuning little adjustments in our views of ethics and morality? I don't know how you can get there until you get over these huge hurdles people have put up.
Yeah. It's funny because I sort of started on this whole journey of research of religion because I dated a fundamentalist Christian my sophomore year of college, and she, she's a great girl. I'm not talking anything bad about her, but she was a little closed-minded at the time. I brought up some passages one time about the genocide of the Canaanites, and she actually tried to rationalize it, and that was the first point in my life where I was like, wow,
Yeah,
they'll do that. Yeah.
They were evil people. They had it coming. That type of thing I get all the time.
Yeah.
By the way, this is Matt, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Can I ask you something? Are you hearing a nasty echo when you're talking?
No.
Good. Then we fixed one audio issue.
At least with him. I don't know that I've ever. This is interesting because thinking of these sorts of ethical issues in terms of the whole problem of might makes right. I've never really thought of might makes right as being a serious ethical. Well, when you are talking about within it's a human to human issue.
Yeah.
Then when you have one race or one government oppressing its people or this, that, or the other, and backing up with a force of arms, that to me that would be how I would define a might makes right issue. I don't know that I would ever have considered applying it to just the whole issue of vegetarianism versus eating meats. I think that there are sound biological and evolutionary reasons why we are omnivorous. I believe that it's known that meat in the diet of early Homo sapiens is what gave us an advantage in our brain development and helped us sort of shove Homo erectus and Neanderthals and all the rest of them, into the mists of evolutionary history. But and there's something to be said. I mean, there are animal proteins that are if these things were not beneficial to our bodies, then as a result of how we evolved, then it simply becomes, I think, if you want to be a vegetarian, you have to look at either other health issues like, well, if I go vegetarian and I don't eat meat, then I don't get all of that saturated animal fat, and so that's healthier for me. And then on a personal level, if you think about it and you really do have an ethical issue with the idea of, the poor sweet cow is going to get killed for my dinner and I just don't want, if that bothers you, then by all means, don't eat that cow. It should not. I mean, that's, I think, where the line is. People sort of have to make that decision themselves, and if And like anything else you believe in, if you want to argue it to others, you should have the right to do that too and present your case. And if you change minds, you change minds, and that's all fine.
There's another aspect of this that I've talked about before, which may not be a good argument at all. I mean, I'm open to having discussions about this on occasion, although I really don't need every ethical vegan on the planet emailing me to get. I just don't have enough time. But I think the issue is kind of difficult. But one of the things that we've talked about before is the idea that we do make distinctions with regard to what rights we afford different individuals. And for example, we don't allow kids to do certain things, and we don't necessarily afford voting rights to our pets. So we do make some distinctions. And I think that my position, by and large, is one that is fair in some sense, because, for example, if a shark tries to eat me or a tiger tries to eat me, I don't think that the tiger or shark is immoral for trying to do that. And as long as I'm willing to afford them the right to attempt to kill and eat me, then I should also have the right to attempt to kill and eat them.
back.
And I don't afford that same right to other humans. No human has the right to attempt to kill and eat me.
Because a human being can make the decision.
Yes.
And if they are attacking you, they're attacking you because they made a decision.
Now, somebody just went nuts when I said that, and they're composing an email as fast as they can, and I promise I'll read it. But that's about it.
True.
Well, thanks a lot for calling, Matt. Did you have one last thing?
Yeah, I was actually going to answer another question, but I was saying you guys need to get some more calls. I just want to say I'm a huge fan of you guys. I've got relatives in Houston, so maybe I'll drive down to Austin one of these days if I go visit them.
Be great to see you. Yeah, definitely.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah, no problem. And like I said, just you guys are awesome. Keep going. I mean, obviously, deist to atheist isn't really happy with transition, but you guys have armed me with a lot of great arguments and a lot of great things to argue against theists with. So. Yeah, guys, keep doing what you're doing. The world needs you more than you know. So.
Gosh. Thank you.
Thanks.
The world
I feel like Spider-Man or something.
It's up with people time. The world.
We got Colin in Chicago.
Yeah.
How you doing?
I'm good. How you doing, guys?
We're all right.
All right. I'm a big fan. And what I really want to talk about is that I'm starting to notice now is that there's this new thing that's happening around, like, the younger generation, like, community where, like, I don't know how to explain it. It's the religious leaders I see now are taking a lot of the celebrities that, like, young kids look up to, and there's, like, this whole movement to tying them to Satan that I'm starting to notice that's taking, like, a big, like, jump.
Nothing new there.
A lot of it's... Huh?
There's nothing new there.
Actually, that would be interesting. Who specifically are they talking about?
Yeah, it's
like,
more... I know there's nothing new there, but it's more specifically, like, the person. I noticed that they're doing it with Jay-Z a lot. And the thing is because there's this new thing, like, you've probably seen it or heard about it, this video called the Jay-Z Deception, and they really just try and tie him to, like, Satan, and not just him, like, everybody in the, like, rap community just about, they've gotten to the point where they're saying anybody successful is tied to all this satanic stuff, and I've been trying to like...
Now, who is this doing this? Is this like a specific church or religious group of people?
It is a specific person.
In your area in Chicago there?
No, actually, it's in the country, but it's reaching tons of people, and it's getting, like, plays on many, like, websites. And I only noticed it because I'm a big fan of rap, and, like, on websites I go to check out what's going on. This pops up everywhere I go now. Yeah. And it's really amazing to me. And I only called in because I really need help because you guys know a lot more terms. And there's a lot of these things that, like, there's a term for collective belief where people really believe what they want to despite the fact because it's more comforting. And I thought there was, like, a specific, like, belief or a specific term for that. I was wondering if you guys had one.
Can you describe that one more time?
Yeah, I'm sorry about that. It's when people, despite the facts, because it's, you can go on, like, a million sites that advertise this thing, and every time you go to see, like, a thread or something that has this video, there are millions of replies to it, but when somebody tries to say something and dispute a reply or make something, like, I saw a video, actually, that very thoroughly tried to debunk the Jay-Z deception, but, like, nobody cared about it, and the only quotes the guy had were actually a bunch of Christian extremists, it seemed like, that were just trying to dispute it the whole time, and it had low ratings and everything, and it seemed like they didn't even give it a chance because it just went slightly against what they are, well, not slightly, exactly against what they believed. And I don't know if there's a term for that.
So what you're seeing, maybe you might call it groupthink, where a bunch of people have just latched on to whatever this anti-Jay-Z ministry is saying, and they're just parroting everything that he's saying, and they're not really interested in listening to what people who disagree with them might have to say, and they're all essentially just regurgitating whatever is being said by whoever's out there trying to say that Jay-Z is Satan.
Yeah,
okay.
That's the big thing that was just funny to me, because it really didn't make sense. And the thing is that for every video for Jay-Z now, it's about him and like Kanye West and stuff like that. I don't know if you remember, but Kanye did the song Jesus Walks, and now he's Satan's helper now. Because and people are believing this. And then the funny thing is, though, is a lot of it I found out is that these people are starting to, edit their posts and stuff like that. So all you see are people that kind of say, "Oh, that's great" and everything like that. And it's really funny. Like, I know it's not the first thing, but I just wanted to call in to get a couple terms, because I've actually met with a couple people who believe it, and it's almost like, I don't know how to say, it's like they train for debates and they have more charisma, whereas like they know how to like break you down by technique as opposed to just by straight facts.
Well,
I think that I can say with all honesty that anybody that becomes convinced that Jay-Z is the devil because they saw a video on YouTube
is a fracking idiot.
Yeah.
You'd be surprised how many.
Here's the thing. I'm sure that to a hip hop fan like yourself, Colin, this is all a big nuisance and very annoying, and it's frustrating that people are being this dumb. But yeah, I mean, I would not necessarily worry about it so much. I don't think that you're gonna Jay-Z and Kanye and all those are gonna see big plummeting music sales, or their tours are gonna flop because suddenly all the mindless zombies are flocking to the anti-Jay-Z campaign. I don't really know that it's so much to worry about. This is no different than every other attack on what the kids like that have come down throughout history, where there's rock and roll.
Plus, they're both weak when in comparison to like Eminem and Master Ace.
But this is back. I remember because I was a teenager in the '80s when you had the PMRC do the record labeling campaign with Tipper Gore and all of them. That was when that was kind of this. So it was this big. It wasn't a religiously necessarily motivated thing, although it was. Frank Zappa came out, I think, and at the time and really called them on it. He said, "No, this is all about the music industry. They want them to just sort of kowtow and take away anything that certain Christians don't like, and that's very offensive." But this is really just more of the same.
It does touch on.
It wasn't really. I might have confused you guys. It wasn't really the thought that I was worried about it, but it was more about I was looking for more help on how to maybe debate people on these type of things to help them.
Great, and that goes back to what we were talking about initially, only from a slightly different angle, which is what approach could somebody recommend? And my answer is whatever approach gets results. If laughing at someone because they bought into something that was on a YouTube video, if that's what works, that's fine. I don't necessarily advocate that as a first approach anywhere, but if you're talking about people who, when you present them with evidence that contradicts what they happen to believe, they just ignore the evidence. Now you're dealing with people who aren't interested in reason at all. And so that means that you're either going to have to try to take an emotional tract or a ridicule tract or anything like that, or ignore it, because it really doesn't matter that much.
Yeah, and if they're not willing to hear you, then they're not interested in the debate or the discussion. They just want to preach and have you accept it. And so I agree. I would say whatever response you give should be some variant of what Matt said before. If you're really stupid enough to believe that Jay-Z is Satan based on something you saw on YouTube, then you're really too stupid to live. So just leave it at that.
And see, there's even a difference in tact between Martin and myself.
Yeah.
I like that. You guys are really cool, man. I'll have to stop down there, just like the other caller said, just because of that. That was pretty funny.
Thanks, Colin.
Hey, have a good time fighting with these idiots, Colin. Take care.
We got I don't know if this thing's actually been updated. This is
Zachary has been waiting for some time.
in Maryland.
Yep.
You there?
Hi, Zachary. Can you hear us?
Hey, I can hear you just fine.
Good. We're not echoing or reverbing or doing anything weird?
No, actually, you're coming in quite clear, but the stream is actually down. I've been listening to the last 20 minutes of the show on the telephone.
Oh, dear.
Ah.
Okay. Well, that's a Ustream thing. Sorry, Ustreamers.
It's all good.
Oh, well. Anyway.
Wow, I can't believe I'm actually on. This is crazy. I love you guys. You guys have the best show ever. I watch it all the time. But I called with the discussion topic. What was it? I actually called with the discussion topic that I thought would be kind of interesting to go over. I was recently at my girlfriend's house. I've known my girlfriend for 5 years. I met her freshman
You're not
year
going
of
to
high
get freaky and make me hang up on you, are you?
No.
Okay.
We were actually having dinner with her mother, and they have a house guest there that stays there. Her mom was trying to drag me and her to church again, which we kind of came out of the closet about our atheism around the same time. I think she a little earlier than me, and then I kind of followed. But her mom started to talk to me about, well, why don't you want to go to church? And I was explaining how I would feel like a hypocrite because I'm not taking in anything they're saying, and I disagree with all of it, and whatever. But I started to engage her in discussion. And we sat down and I had an intelligent conversation with her mother, and then the other woman that was there, her mother asked for some backup, and this woman says, I don't think that at your age you can decide what you believe and what you don't believe.
And how old are you?
I am 19.
Okay.
How old was she?
50-something, I don't know.
You should have said, I don't think at your age you're still capable of deciding what you believe and what you don't believe. I mean, it's just as arbitrary and ridiculous as what she said to you.
Yeah.
I was so offended because, one, okay, are you saying that, 12-year-olds that were raised Christian, are you saying that they, because they're Christian, they have they're old enough to decide for themselves, or is it,
Well, how old was this woman when, what I would have asked her was, how old were you when you became Christian?
Yeah, probably.
If it was 19 or younger, I would say, well, how do you know that you were old enough to have made that decision? And this is the sort of thing that you run into with Christians a whole lot, which is fundamentalists specifically. I shouldn't say Christians because you can have, like you said, intelligent conversations with many of them. But what she was doing was the usual thing of, well, I don't actually have an argument to refute what you're saying with, so I will just condescend to you and be dismissive and handle it that way.
The thing is that she could be, in what she meant, she could be correct for some people. I mean, for example, I'm 40. I can look back on decisions that I made.
You don't look a day over 41.
Thank you. I can look back on decisions I made when I was a teenager or when I was in my early 20s, and some of them were good decisions, and some of them were bad decisions, and some of the things that I believed and accepted, I accepted for bad reasons, and some of them I accepted for good reasons. People make mistakes. There wasn't anything intrinsic to my age that made my decisions better or worse. What has improved my decision-making abilities is knowledge and understanding. And just because, I've met people who, 19-year-olds, who I can have conversations with about all of these issues, who have a greater understanding, are better informed, have a better perspective and understanding of logical thought, critical thinking, can more quickly identify fallacies, and have a greater desire to filter what they experience down to determine what's real and not real than people who are 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80. The age thing, once you've reached a relative age of I can't even come up with a word.
Maturity, experience.
Yeah, it's, okay, we let 21-year-olds drink and 18-year-olds vote. and those are somewhat arbitrary because there's probably some 12 and 13-year-olds out there that I'd rather have drinking and voting than some of the ones who are doing it. They draw a line somewhere. But to have somebody say, well, basically what she said is she thinks you're just going through a rebellious phase because of your age.
It's the old, it's just a phase thing.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
And the thing is that in no way addresses the truth of the issue at all. And it is an admission of failure, and it's your obligation, in my opinion, to note that and say it. You have just admitted that you have no coherent defense for your position. And the best thing you could do was dismiss me and what I've said outright. That's an admission of failure.
Oh, well, I would love to do that, but I've always been on her mother's good side, and her mother is a Christian, and I wasn't about to go all out, but I wanted to.
I'm with you.
Yeah. Well, you could have completely disarmed her by because clearly she wanted to ruffle you and she wanted to offend you, and so that worked. And so she said that, and she saw you get a little red, and she went hee, point for me. When what you probably could have done, and just save this for future reference, is completely disarmed her by.
I looked up at her and I flat out said, "That's a hollow statement. That's an entirely hollow statement." And
well, that's a valid answer. Yeah, it was a hollow statement. You could have also said something like, "Well, maybe I am, but perhaps if you have an actual argument for me to entertain, let me listen to that. Let me think about it more. Maybe I'll get some of that valuable experience you say I lack from listening to you. What have you got?" But it's a hollow statement, is shorter to the point, so you did okay.
I really wanted to go into more detail, but like I said, I was kind of treading on fragile ground.
Yeah,
we're back again to the same thing that we've talked about 20 times today, which is
the right approach.
Yeah, what approach do you take?
Right.
So dinner guest situation can be awkward.
And as somebody, I've been doing this for almost 5 years, and 170 some odd shows I've done. And I don't know how many emails. I mean, I couldn't even begin to count. I can honestly say that I've tried just about every approach to each of these issues that I'm capable of. And there have been times when I've had a lengthy discussion with somebody in email, for example, where we've been going, and now we're clear that we're getting nowhere, and the conversation's getting heated. And I said, and I've said, okay, hang on, let's just stop. Let's just go back to the beginning. Here's what you said. And almost without fail, they're surprised by what they said at the beginning because they've moved a little in their position. And what I'll get when we do the let's go back to the beginning and look at this, what I'll get in response most of the time is, well, what I meant was, that's fine. I've had to do that too. We all have. And in some ways, it's a little bit of a defense mechanism. But it does let you get past the point of talking past each other on that issue, maybe.
I find that the Bible is, they did that about the Bible a lot. They're like, oh, well, the Bible actually meant to say this. But
oh, well, that's slightly different. That's them claiming
that's a whole different issue.
Yeah, so the Bible is the inerrant word of God, except when it isn't.
Yeah. I feel as though whether a child is too young or whether or not it is the right decision, I feel as though whenever that person is defecting from whatever it is that they were raised with, they're automatically making a decision based on thinking for themselves.
Yeah, I don't know what this individual happens to believe specifically. I don't know if she was perhaps, I don't even know if she was a Christian, or if she was defending anything like that. But if you came across this argument from somebody who was, for example, a fundamentalist Christian, just to pick the one that's easiest to respond to, then what you're doing is you just look at them and say, wait a minute, you believe that there's a God who, if I die right now, is going to reward me or punish me based on what I believe, and yet you're convinced that I'm not old enough to really know what I believe.
Yeah. But if it's raining me tomorrow,
Yeah.
I find that asking questions is the best thing in the world, first of all.
Yeah.
But
pin them down.
Rephrasing the question in the light of the consequences of their belief. It's the number of times people have there's a Muslim who has traded a couple emails back and forth with me this week who's trying to argue that there's this prophecy about a full moon at the start of Ramadan, or on the first possible day of full moons in Ramadan, and then a solar eclipse at this other one would specifically foretell, this event. And I don't know, he's built all this up, and I said, wait a minute, even if I agreed that everything you said is correct, that somewhere around 800 AD, somebody predicted a month that would contain a lunar and solar eclipse, so what?
Yeah,
I mean, first of all,
Nuts.
And how many failed prophecies have they gone through before that one worked?
Well, no, they were saying that this is something that will occur, and when this occurs, this will happen. And he's saying that this has happened there. But what I'm saying is that let's say that there was a guy who in 800 CE said, on Sunday afternoon in the year 2009, a bald man with flames on his shirt will talk about prophecy in Austin. That's an impressive prediction. It's not, it doesn't necessarily have to be dead on accurate. It doesn't have to give gross details. But if that prophecy existed and somebody presented it, we'd say, seems to me like somebody prophesied this and it came true. And my response to that is still, okay, how did they do it? You cannot get from they predicted the future to they predicted the future because
God.
What? Did they get lucky? Did they travel back in time? Was there a God who did it? Do they have some mental ability that allows them to foresee the future? You cannot get to what caused the event strictly from the event alone. There's a reason why science focuses on that which can be tested and repeated, and why prophecy tends to fail by and large as a convincer, because somebody said something a long time ago, and usually we've interpreted that this has happened, or somebody has been actively working for 1,000 years to make it happen, which is as stupid as saying that when the waiter brings me what I ordered, he's fulfilling prophecy. If you've got people actively working to make something come true, I mean, that's not an impressive prophetic.
It's a self-fulfilling prophecy is what it
But
is.
you cannot get from this happened to this is the cause of that without any extra information. You've got to come up with extra information, which is why I told him, okay, even if you had 20 prophecies this guy did, so what? I mean, it's impressive, it's nifty, it's cool, but you can't get from there to Allah, blessed be his name, is the one who told him what was going to happen in the future. You just can't do it. You have to provide more information. And in the case of most historic claims, we're incapable of investigating them properly.
Yeah.
Okay.
Cool. Well, thanks a lot.
All right, Zachary.
Yeah.
Take care.
Thanks a
Appreciate
lot.
your call.
Yeah,
Good luck.
We've been told by the control room that the people watching the stream aren't going to be able to hear this, so too bad, but you can download the podcast version when it's ready, and then you'll hear it. Stream got killed by a virus. These viruses that are floating all around the Access Studio computers are...
We're not exactly sure how and where this came from, but it's messing up a lot of stuff. Luckily, the show seemed to be working. The calls seem to be working. Thanks to Daniel again for our new lower third, which saves us some graphic space, because way over there it actually says the Atheist Experience, so we don't have to put the name of the show across. It's all fancy and HD and pretty. But so this may be the last caller that I actually know who's on the line, but it should be Ryan from Boulder.
Yes, this is me.
How you doing, Ryan?
Good. How are you guys?
All right.
Not bad.
I've been listening only for a couple weeks now. I found this.
What was wrong with you before?
On YouTube. What was that?
I said, what was wrong with you before?
Nothing. Nothing at all.
All right.
But I want to touch on what that last caller was saying before I go on with my original point. That whole mentality of owning what a child or indoctrinated, that just frightens me so severely. I grew up in a household where religion, that was just kept away from me, and of course I was introduced to it. We talked about Santa, of course, but and eventually I found out that was a lie.
What?
But
sorry. I'll shut up and let you finish.
Thing I meant to say.
I apologize. Go ahead.
No, that's great. But I never really grew up in a household where that was forced on me, and at for about 3 years of my life, I actually lived in Colleyville, Texas. So I was surrounded by a lot of Christian influence at one point, and it was a really susceptible point in my life too, when I was like 7 or 8, and I had even gone to some of the youth camps or whatever. But even then, there was never any hint of Christianity being or God being real. It was never there, and I always look back on it. I was talking to my mom a few years ago, and she says, I kind of wish that I had raised you, religious and to believe in God. And I said, yeah, but isn't it funny that you didn't? And with none of that indoctrination, I came to an opinion on my own. But I'm just very thankful that I grew up in an environment that was very free of that.
Well, maybe she's saying that she wishes she had, so that you would have come to a different opinion.
Yeah, that is what she said. But she said that there was a lot of emotions going on in there.
Well, there's some serious concern. I have plenty of family who are religious. I love them; they love me. We disagree on some things, but there's a difference. In while I may think that their particular views about a God or an afterlife or any of this other stuff is incorrect, unsupported by evidence, and even delusional in some cases, to them it's different. Their concern isn't with reality or the here and now. It's about what's going to happen to me after I'm dead. And that's they bought into this idea, so their focus is in a different place. And so I'm usually okay with you care about me and you mean well, and you're concerned for me, and I appreciate that in the same way that I'd be concerned for you if I saw you doing something that I thought was harmful. The difference is that there needs to be some demonstration that there's harm there. It's no different from telling somebody that I really wish you'd stop breathing that oxygen because I'm convinced it's going to kill you, when all evidence is to the contrary.
Well, when she said it, it was a really frightening thing to me because I wouldn't exactly call her a believer. She seems to be a person who wants to believe, would love to believe, but despite all of that, she has that big brain in her head, so she can't seem to do it. And it was a really frightening statement for me because basically what it said is like, I almost want to buy into this delirium. Like I wish I could buy into this delirium, and that was really kind of creepy.
What's creepy to me about the statement is that there's an intimation there that she thinks there is probably something a little bit wrong with you that maybe religion would fix. That maybe there's something about how you turned out that she's not happy with.
Well, she's
I don't want
mom. I'm a 21-year-old. I listen to blaring metal music. But
okay. But see, if you were a Christian, you would be listening to Petra and Stryper, and it would all be great.
Yeah, seriously. Oh man. But anyway, I wanted to get onto something. The Pope is just someone who fascinates me.
The current Pope, or the Pope in general?
Just the Pope, the position in the person in the position of the Pope, acting as the Pope at any given time throughout history. It is one of the most fascinating individuals to me because, more or less we're left with three possible reasons as to why he's doing what he's doing. Either God is real and he is the one person on earth who is who's closest to him to talk to him and commune with him. And I think, both me and all of you, just believe that, and the same, we don't believe that at all. But then there's also the position that he's crazy. Maybe he really does think he talks to God. Maybe he's grown up and has been told so many times, or he was, born, I don't know how to word this, special, but maybe he really thinks he talks to God. And then there's the other outcome, which is most likely, and that is just that he is just one of the most vile, evil people on the face of the earth, who really tells everyone he can talk to God, and then goes up into his little chambers, and without an inclination of expecting to talk to God, just sits there and eats his steak or whatever, and reads.
The current contemporary popes have nothing on the medieval popes, right? The medieval popes had mistresses, they had little catamites running in and out of the chambers, they threw massive banquets, they they raped, killed, pillaged, and burned, and they were just partiers. And I forget who it was, but there was one particular pope in the 14th century who was especially bad at all of this, much more so than his immediate predecessors had been. And when some of his cardinals brought up, all of this hedonism and excess that you're all about, it's kind of it's not good for public opinion. Is there any pretty good? And this pope's response was, well, my predecessors did not know how to be popes. So Benedict or Ratzinger or whoever he is, the modern popes, they have nothing on the medieval popes. Those guys were...
With regard to the current pope and your three options, on the first option that there is a God and the pope's got some kind of hotline to him, if that's the case, then the best we can say is that either God is inept or the pope is inept because there's some flaws in the communication there. Otherwise, the Vatican would never have to correct anything like, limbo, the fictions they invent. Of the other two options, I don't know that they're mutually exclusive. On the one hand, I think he could be convinced that what he's doing is true and right, and perhaps he hears from God, and also still be one of the most evil, vile people on the planet. Because in this case of this particular pope, he used to be responsible for shuffling the pedophile priests around from area to area and doing everything he could to hide what was going on and avoid any embarrassment to the church of prosecution. What they don't seem to understand is that, they might have saved the church some embarrassment in the eyes of the people who would, are going to buy anything that gets handed down as a papal edict. But to everybody else, they have further embarrassed the church. What they've done in just this one issue alone is probably one of the most reprehensible acts I can imagine. Absolutely. Because the actions they took didn't just protect somebody from prosecution. They put that somebody out there
where he could do more
harm
harm
somebody else. So not only have they already victimized the first victims twice, once by allowing it to happen, and a second time by pretending that it didn't. They then encourage somebody else to get victimized twice, and this goes on over and over and over again. And what reward does this guy get? What does the church do when it comes time to clean this up? They make him pope. It's vile.
Yeah. It is vile.
And it's not just this pope. He didn't get to be pope by himself. It's not like he said, "Okay, guys, it's my turn." There's a whole college of cardinals. There's a whole institution there. There's an entire business that did this. And if any other corporation had done anything like this, they'd all be in jail. Sarah Silverman did a great video that I absolutely loved, which was a Feed the World by Selling Vatican City. And it was funny, and I'd encourage people to go out and watch it.
Yeah, I should.
But it's true. It's true. They could sell off everything they have and all their assets, build a nice condo to put themselves up in with a pool and
all their catamites,
hot and cold running hookers, and then give all the rest of the money to buy pizzas for everybody on the planet for years. It's nuts.
And right there in Italy, they got the best pizzas.
Yeah,
I tell you.
It is vile. It really is.
Yeah.
Anyway, I just wanted to share my opinion on that. I thought we'd agree, but just like to hear you guys. I'm a big fan.
Great,
thanks a lot.
Thanks.
Appreciate it, Ryan.
Have a good one.
Yeah,
guys.
I mean, just turn the Sistine Chapel into an art museum, and charge. Yeah.
Because I had nothing against the art of the building design. I love all that stuff. It's good.
Just
so we got David in Austin.
on line 3.
Hello.
David?
Hello.
What's up, Matt?
Hey, this David?
Hey. I wanted to ask you something. It was a couple of questions I want to ask you, but for the most, I want to ask you about how atheists, they get married, right?
Some of them do, yeah.
Some of them
Just
do.
like anybody else,
Yeah, but I was saying, if marriage comes from the Bible, why would they get married?
What makes you think marriage comes from the Bible?
That's where it came from.
What, really? Says who?
Yeah. I mean, that's the first place we heard of it. We ain't heard about it nowhere else, right?
Really? Where is it in the Bible? And what makes you think that's the first place? Marriage is it's a state-sanctioned corporation institution, and I don't have to be involved in any church or religion in order to get married. And if you only got married in your church without the certificate from the state, you'd get no benefits from it. Marriage isn't something that the Bible that was invented by the Bible or anybody else. As a matter of fact, for years, the idea of marriage as it exists now did not exist. And the Bible endorses, for example, polygamy, among other things. So I don't know where you got your information that marriage comes from the Bible, but it's wrong.
And so all those people in cultures long before the Bible existed, like ancient Rome, ancient Egypt, Babylon, all those ancient cultures, people were getting married there too, long before there ever was a Bible. So,
but back then it was just, I'm going to give you my daughter in exchange for some property.
And it was like that for many years into the Christian era as well. Marriage was about political alliances, family alliances, financial alliances between kings and queens and daughters and this noble house and that noble house. So it's actually a pretty recent social change, you might say, for a boy and a girl to meet and fall in love and tell mom and dad we're in love and we're getting married. That's so it's not really, Bible really doesn't have a whole heck of a lot to do with it. So.
All right. Well, can I ask you one more question?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. Another thing I kind of wanted to know was like, all right. I'm sorry. This is kind of weird because I actually thought that's where it came from. Like Adam and Eve. And
that's okay. The number of things. There's a number of things that people believe. Popular conventions, kind of like good old-fashioned folk wisdom and stuff. That, for example, this is a Christian nation founded on Christian principles. None of that's true. There are people who think that the national motto of "In God We Trust," which was added in the 1950s, has always been there, and that's not true. There's a campaign of misinformation, and by and large, people, including myself, including most of the people I know, people are generally lazy. And if you get information from a source that you trust, you tend to go with it until it fails you. I mean, it's just the way we work.
I'm saying, like, what about like answering to somebody? Like if there's nobody, like, I mean, like I'm only 27, and like my whole life I've heard of God, God and Jesus in the Bible,
sure,
and all that. And it's like, not saying it was like forced on me, but it's kind of like embedded in me,
Sure.
what I'm saying?
Well, yeah, you grew up with
I
it,
was
like
the same way.
Yeah, we all kind of grew up with it.
And it's like to kind of like hear like you have nobody to answer to. It kind of like puts you in a position where you can think like, well, if I ain't got nobody to answer to, it's like I can do whatever the hell I want to do.
What makes you think I have nobody to answer?
Whatever comes to my mind, I could just do it.
Yeah, but you see, that's another one. That's more of this kind of cultural misinformation that Matt was talking about before. The idea, part of the way religion makes you dependent upon itself, and that is the job of religion. Religion wants believers who are dependent upon the religion for pretty much everything in their lives. For their sense of personal security, for their sense of what they think might be right and wrong. Religion is, it sounds kind of melodramatic and, like conspiracy thinking to say it wants to control you, but, in a simplistic sense, that's kind of how it is. Religion wants you to be dependent on it. Like, if you, say in some relationships where you have a husband and a wife and the husband's very domineering and he wants the wife to be totally dependent on him and not have her own life. It's a similar situation to that. So one of the ideas that religion has sort of put out there in this culture is that in terms of right and wrong and what you can and can't do, if there isn't a God, well then maybe that must mean you have no one to answer to, and therefore you have no limitations on your behavior, you can do whatever you want. And of course that's wrong. For one thing, we have to live with one another. We have to get along in our society unless we just want total chaos and riots in the streets, right? And so,
but this is what I'm saying. Why would we have to? We have nobody to answer to it. It's like why
because we have each other.
Why would I care about your feelings, or why should you care about my feelings? You know what I'm saying?
Well, because we have each other to answer to in a culture, and it's not just about. We are a species that live together. With one. We're not like great white sharks that swim around all by themselves. We actually have to get along with each other because that's the kind of being that we are as people. We're social. And we survive because we form these social contracts with each other. You have friends, you have family, you have coworkers, and then you have the community at large. It all scales up. So we all have to answer to each other. And, you know, if you look at what happens with people who think like what you're suggesting, well, I can just go and do whatever I want. I can go and do bad stuff and it doesn't matter. And what do they find usually happens to them? They get picked up by the cops, get arrested, go to jail. So evidently it does matter.
I mean, but that doesn't, I mean, that right there ain't gonna matter versus, you know, the prize you're trying to get. Like, okay, I'm not trying to say nothing like racially and nothing like that, but like black people growing up, you know what I'm saying, it's kind of a lot different from the way white people was growing up. Like, we would see like dudes riding around in the big body cars and fine girls and money and all that, and we want that. You know what I'm saying? We're not looking at, oh, well, let's go get successful and get a good job and all that. Let's do it the easy way. You know what I'm saying? Like, honestly, if there's nobody to answer to, it's like we won't see nothing wrong with that. I mean, it's all good to do that. It's all good to go rob and steal and do all that, regardless of what the law said. You know
but if the law picks you up and puts you in jail, then, you know, you can sit there in your jail cell all day long trying to convince yourself that what you did was fine and good. But if you've had your freedom taken away and then you've had your rights taken away because you're a convicted felon, then, if that doesn't get the message across to you, then I don't really see what will. You know, most people, it's natural for us to get along. It's you know, a lot of people talk about, well, what could I do, what could I not do, depending on what I believe or what. But really, when you get right down to it, this whole idea that morals simply come from following authority doesn't really work, because if that were the case, if it were simply about, well, this is only right and wrong because there's a God or an ultimate authority that says it's right or wrong, then think about it. If that ultimate authority or God or what have you one day said, well, I declare it to be morally right and for everyone to kill their own children, and so I command you to do this, well, would it be the right thing to do? Would you turn around that day?
In my eyes, of course, it would never be right to kill a child.
Well, see, there you go. See, there you are.
You don't need a God to determine what's moral, because if your God came to you and said, kill your kids, you'd say, no, that's wrong. Because
honestly, I would think that, I would think it's wrong, but, you know, God wouldn't, well, I take that back. God would just like he did with the ram and all that stuff and the bush and stuff. But
the thing is,
if he would have come to me personally and tell me something like that, of course, I'd do it hands down.
You do what?
Right,
you wouldn't do it?
I would do it.
You would do it?
Yes, I would.
You would kill your kid if God told you to?
Yes, most definitely.
Okay, then you're beyond hope. You're an immoral person who doesn't understand that you are your own moral authority. In much the same way that your first instinct was to say, this is wrong and I wouldn't do it, why would you ever worship some God that would tell you to do something like that?
But he hasn't told me to do something like that.
He hasn't told you yet. He hasn't told you yet, David, but you just admitted that if he did, you would do it. And
that's thinking in the world sense. That's thinking in the world sense. That's not thinking on the spiritual level. I'm thinking on the spiritual level.
I don't give a damn about the spiritual.
But if it's in the world sense, and I'm not thinking about God, that God don't exist, of course I'm not going to do it, because for what? Who are you?
David, I don't give a damn about the spiritual level. I'm talking about...
I know you don't give a damn about the spiritual level because you don't believe in that.
That's correct.
You want to hell with your eyes open.
That's correct. I'm talking about reality. And in reality, it is my view that it is wrong to murder your kid. And in reality, it is your view that it's wrong to murder your kid. And yet what you've just said is, if this authority figure that you worship were to tell you to do that, you would do it and think that it was good.
I won't think twice of it. Yes, I would do it.
Well, then you have sacrificed your humanity, your self-respect, your decency, and your moral authority to some being.
We're not here forever, man. This is only a pit stop. We're not here forever. So if fucking humanity,
you're not anywhere forever.
Shut up, bitch.
All right, that's what I thought. Mm-hmm. How
try to get him to think, and it all just breaks down.
I don't believe you'd actually do that, but the fact that you admitted it and then don't see the problem with it. I mean, how can you possibly think like that? Christopher Hitchens had talked about, and we talked about earlier about, the woman who would perhaps kind of like for some of this to be true. I don't. Yeah. Not for any religion I've heard. I'm not just picking on Christianity. For no religion have I heard that I would wish that it was true. Yeah. That I would never wish that I get to the end of my life and find out that this 70, 80, 90, 100 years, whatever, was some kind of cosmic freaking joke, and that the real life starts after I die. That's how you form a death cult, which is what most of those religions end up being.
Yeah.
I would never worship or revere any being that I didn't, I am the ultimate judge of what I consider to be moral and immoral. And any being who perhaps I respect and admire, who comes to me and says, you need to kill your kid, my answer is, you need to go to hell.
Yeah, screw you. Oh, it's not.
This,
David, I should point out, this is not the first Christian caller that we have heard from who has said this.
Not even close.
You try to pin them down on some consistency on this whole idea that morals have to come from a God. God is an absolute authority figure. Okay, well then what if this absolute authority figure told you to do X that you consider to be morally reprehensible? You would be surprised, but he is not the first guy who has said, well then yeah, I do it. And that right there, I think, points to the whole problem of this idea of morality coming from authority. I think I can say pretty conclusively, Christianity has no morality. What Christianity has is obedience to authority.
Yeah.
That's really all it's got. And it has that as a substitute for morality. It simply takes for granted that there's this all-powerful being, all-knowledgeable being, who, because he is omniscient and omnipotent, just would never ask us to do anything bad anyway.
Yeah, despite evidence.
Yeah, and because Father knows best, as it were.
Hey,
so
David,
we can simply allow him to do our thinking for us.
David, if you're God,
it's intellectual. I'm sorry, I was just going to say this is indicative of the whole intellectual and moral laziness of Christian fundamentalism. You abdicate morality in favor of just obedience to authority.
Yeah.
And on the one hand, I think I would agree with you that David, if he were confronted with that situation, probably would not do what he says that he would do. But he is in this sort of feedback loop of confusion that his religious indoctrination has put him into.
Hey, David, if your God comes and says that it's okay for me to make you my slave, would you do it?
No.
Would you? I mean, it's one thing to say you'd kill your own kid, but would you do that if God said it's okay? Because I'm pretty sure that if you go look at your holy book, you'll find that the God you believe in supposedly said that.
Kind of okay with the whole idea.
But, if you're fine with that, then, you have no moral sense. You're just an automaton following whatever the guy in charge says. Oh, he's the one. He said it's okay. I'm going to go kill. Oh, that's right. I'll be your bitch. Be a man. Be a real human being. Take responsibility for your actions. Take pride in your accomplishments. Understand that, yeah, it's okay to say this is wrong. Absolutely, under no circumstances do I find this acceptable. I don't care if you call yourself a god or not. This is wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And until you break free of that, until you recognize that it's okay to do that, not only okay, it is essential. It is critical to the progress of humanity that people wake up from these delusions where they have sacrificed everything about themselves in order to walk lockstep with some dick of an authority that doesn't even exist. I mean, this is, somebody said, somebody on high said this, and I'm going to, it's not even like you're getting the instructions from anybody real.
And apologists bring up a lot of these red herrings. Like, well, I love this one. What objective moral standard do you use to tell you that your personal morals are more right than... And I always just hit them back with, well, what objective moral standard are you using to decide that what this God tells you is right or wrong is in fact right or wrong? And it always falls back on the same question. Well, then if God told you to do X, which you have already said you think is wrong, would you do it? If you say yes, then morality doesn't really matter to you. You're all about obedience to authority. And finally, last word on this, because let's get one more guy in here in the last 7 minutes.
Yeah,
but,
less than 7. But.
Every fundamentalist Christian that I've ever talked to says that salvation is by faith and not works. So, why do you even bring up morals at all? Because it really doesn't matter if that's the case. Morals are utterly irrelevant to Christianity and to your salvation if salvation is just by faith and not works anyway. So it's all a lot of hot air, any Christian argument for morality.
Yeah, when you start figuring out what morality really is and how you go about determining it, then you'll realize that there's all kinds of things about Christianity, including the idea of original sin or substitutional atonement or eternal punishment for finite crimes, all of which are utterly immoral. You're basically brought into a bunch of Bronze Age myths from people who couldn't think any better, and you're saying, I really can't think any better than them either. I can't think for myself. I just need to do what these old people said I need to do. The idea that they came to some grand understanding that we've somehow missed is one I find patently absurd and offensive. But We've got
That's all the kind of,
Ed, I think. Ed in Austin, you there?
Yeah, hey, how you doing?
Hey, thanks for waiting. How you doing?
Hey, can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Just wondering, is there any physical non-Christian proof that Jesus Christ existed?
Not that I'm aware of.
Oh, you mean like physical or documentary or?
Yeah, I guess non-Christian witnesses to.
Well, okay. It's pretty weak, but there's I actually read an article recently in Skeptic magazine by Tim Callahan, who says that it's weak, but you could argue that some of it's there. For example, there is not the passage that we all know is faked, but there is a later passage in Josephus where he talks about James,
the brother.
The execution of James.
Brother of Jesus.
Right, and he refers to James in this passage as James, the brother of Jesus, who was called the Christ. Now, when you read that, argues Tim Callahan, Josephus is not in this passage speaking as a Christian would and saying, oh, and he was the Christ. He is simply saying, James was the brother of this man who was named Jesus, whom people referred to as the Christ. He's just stating that as a fact. There's also, I think, I don't know exactly what it is offhand, but there's a passage. So it's weak.
The problem is that Josephus is not a contemporary.
Yeah.
Josephus wasn't born until after the reported death of Jesus.
Right.
So at best, he's telling you this is what people believe to be true. And by and large, in a historical context, that's okay. It's okay when we say, and James the brother, Jesus the brother, Philip and Peter and blah, blah, blah. Okay, we seem to probably have a pretty good idea that we're pointing to somebody, some actual historical figure. But there is not currently any contemporary eyewitness, first-hand accounts of any event, including in the Bible. These were written
at least
decades later.
At least a generation. Yeah.
So
wow, I wonder why contemporary Christians don't really want to investigate that at all. And
you can't investigate it. That's the problem. And by and large, it doesn't matter because I'm okay with saying, yeah, there's probably some historical guy at the center of these stories. Yeah. But does that mean that he was the Son of God who walked on water and healed people? Do the miracle claims stand up to investigation? And the answer is no, they don't. They don't even remotely.
The best that you can get from this very tiny fragmentary handful of non-biblical ancient sources is that, there was a guy who people believed was this Messiah.
We have 1 minute.
Okay, but that's it. That's all we got.
I apologize, Ed. We got 1 minute. Let me hit this real quick. Thanks, everybody, for coming. There's a list of the people in the studio. We'll be going to dinner, which I haven't mentioned the whole show, at Threadgill's after this is over. You're welcome to join us. Anybody can come. There's more evidence and more eyewitnesses that you can actually talk to with regard to UFO abductions than there is for Jesus. But
Jesus flew the UFO.
We'll see you all again next week. Take care.
And don't forget the blog.
So we're like off the air or not? I have no idea. Everything's a mess here today. How long? It took 20 minutes before one call or something?